What's up? Welcome to the Squad Show. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Today we do mocks where we trade back, and in honor of Quasi, I trade back with a division rival.
I'm Tyler Fornes of A2Z Sports, and I pulled my hamstring walking to Runyons for the first time yesterday. I guess I am like Avion Terrell.
What's going on? Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. And as one of the best coaches in the league at saying a lot, but saying absolutely nothing, I'm excited to see what explosive quotes we get from KOC today.
Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Viking Squad Show starts now.
Let's kick off the week with the Vikings Squad Show. Glad you're with us streaming on Locked On Vikings. A lot to get to today, including draft picks that could start week 1 for the Minnesota Vikings. How can they maximize their picks with some trade backs? We'll run through those scenarios with today's mock sims. We've got prospect of the day from Luke Inman. KOC talks at the league meetings and an ode to Joey Browner. But first, we begin with Vikings that could start week 1 if they are taken in the draft. We are heating this serious draft season now. We are 4 weeks from the NFL draft, calendar almost turning to April. Let's narrow it in first before we start with the names. At what position could a draft pick start? I would narrow it down to the following positions: safety, corner, defensive tackle, and center. Would anyone like to add or subtract from that?
I wholeheartedly agree with the list. I think for me, you think about what's the cleanest path for reps, right? Like what are the positions that already just from day one kind of have an opportunity for someone to come in and compete with whatever veterans are on the team. And for me, I would just say, just kind of echo your thoughts. Safety is for me, hands down, number one with a bullet, because even though, we talk about D-line a lot and corner a lot, those are both big needs. And as far as just the overall health of the roster, they have to add some youth to those positions. But I think for those two spots, you got some guys on paper who, they think could be starters already. You got your 3 corners on day one, D-line, a little bit more of a hodgepodge of 4 or 5 guys that, maybe they want to give someone like Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins the first crack, just for example. But safety is at the top because it not only feels like you only got to beat out Theo Jackson and maybe Jay Ward, but also because, Flores may be looking for not 1, but 2 safeties back there to play next to Josh Metellus if Harrison Smith retires. So I agree with the list, but I got to go safety number 1 and then kind of the second tier of those other positions.
Forno?
The one that I would add is wide receiver. And it also all is going to depend on what you deem being the starting lineup. Are you going to start in 12 personnel or 11? Because if you start in 11, you take a wide receiver in the top 50, that guy can easily be considered a starter. And that's just, your mileage is going to vary on how you want to classify some of that stuff. But in an 11 personnel package, a top wide receiver could easily overtake Ty Felton, especially because we know the Vikings are higher on him than we are, but he didn't really do a lot to impress us outside of being a really good gunner on special teams. I think the number 1 is defensive tackle, because as much as Levi Drake Rodriguez and Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins showed flashes, I don't know if they're going to be above replacement level players where you want to get them in a rotation. You want to play them between 15 and 35 snaps a game, but you don't want to give them the workload that a guy like Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave were getting on a regular basis, playing 45 to 60 snaps. That's not the world we want them to live in. We want to maximize their abilities and minimize the flaws. And I think putting them in too many snaps could end up being a big deterrent. You get a guy like Peter Woods in round 1. I think he starts day 1 because he's got a pedigree to where you can actually expect him to play at a reasonable level as a starter, arguably better than both of the guys I just mentioned.
Yeah. Tough to argue with that too. Just to throw one more caveat in here. I know they kind of sort of like Michael Juergens, we think, but if somebody like, and getting into a couple names, I'm just going to flag out, but like a Logan Jones, we've talked about Jake Slaughter, Connor Liu, stuff like, kind of in that tier, I guess, in round 3, round 4. I feel like you get one of those guys into OTAs and training camp. I got to think just from a pure talent level and standpoint, those guys, by the time the season rolls around, they're taking that job. They're taking that starting center spot and probably not looking back, especially if you end up using a third-round pick on one of them. So if you use a top 100 pick on a center, I feel like the plan is they're your starting center right from the get-go. So, yeah.
Pat Elflein, third round, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Third round started.
Remington Award winner, Pat Elflein. You got it.
Was not bad. His rookie year was not bad. Years 2, 3, and 4, bad. Didn't go well. Garrett Bradbury started week 1. Did not go well. But I agree with you. Center is absolutely part of this list. Toss in wide receiver, like Forno suggested, probably about 5 positions where there's a path to getting a starter. Forno, you focused on defensive tackle. Let's start there. So Peter Woods, you like. What about stacked up against Caden McDonald? They're both staring you in the face. McDonald, of course, the big body, clearly a run stuffer. The question is, can he be more than that? What would you do in that situation?
I think this is a situation where reasonable minds are going to disagree. I've seen people talk about him having a real upside when it comes to pass rush. I don't see it. I see it as a guy who's basically Jonathan Bullard. I think he's a better version of that, but he's just going to push the pocket. He's going to use his strength, but I don't see really any potential to develop like real pass rush moves. I don't see a lot of twitch. I see a guy who I view as a second-round player. He's going to be elite at stopping the run on those first 2 downs. He's going to be capable enough when they run stuff like play action, but you're never going to want him in on third downs when it's an obvious passing situation. And to me, that type of utility is not something you take round 1 unless you see him as this is the next Vince Wilfork. And I think he's a potential Hall of Fame nose tackle. If you believe that, okay, then maybe I could see it round 1. But I want to take a guy who has a lot more utility at that position. So for me, if he's available in the 40s, I'd maybe consider moving up to go get him to like 42, 43. But I wouldn't touch him in the first 32 picks unless it was, hey, I so desperately need a nose tackle to finish my Super Bowl caliber roster. I don't like the utility and don't like spending a premium asset on something where I'm only going to get 2 downs of production.
Yeah, feels a little niche, and you can probably find run stopping at a cheaper free agent cost. So I agree with that take. Inman, where do you stand on DT?
Yeah, tough to argue that, right? Like, it's all about value, right? Like, yes, we got to add good players. That's obviously going to be the name of the game when we look back 2-3 years from now. But from there, it's just about getting the best value, maximizing each draft pick. And I completely agree. I like Caden McDonald. I think he's going to be a good football player. I think he's going to play in the NFL and be a solid contributor, a great run stuffer. And I agree with Forno's assessment that, like, he's not going to give you a lot of pass rush on third down. He's not going to really give you a lot of different, kind of pass rush moves in his arsenal and his bag of tricks. He's kind of a one-trick pony. He's really good at that one trick. But am I really going to take a nose tackle or run-stuffing defensive tackle, I should say, at pick 18? I just don't feel like you're getting very good value at that. So eventually you kind of draw a line in the sand. You get to a point in the draft where it's like, okay, enough's enough. He's lasted this long. Maybe we go get him, like Forno said, middle of the second, early second, whatever that looks like. But I feel like it's just as far as pure value. And also, too, I mean, you talk about a guy like Peter Woods, and you touched on it, Forno. Like, you're just getting a more complete player with a lot higher upside, too. And I feel like in today's NFL, as we saw in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, being able to disrupt the quarterback from inside the pocket is just so valuable. And knowing that Peter Woods offers so much more than Caden McDonald in the pass rushing game, in spades, really, I feel like if you're going to have to take one kind of gun to your head at 18, it's got to be Peter Woods just for the upside alone.
Now, is there any question in anyone's mind that in terms of first round picks, Dylan Thieneman best answers this question? Like, that would be your clear-cut week 1 starter in the first round. Anyone care to contest that?
I don't like Dylan Thieneman in the first round. I don't even know if I'd like him in the second round. I've been pretty outspoken. I've been pretty outspoken about this.
Cool him down. He's on fire. That tank is too hot.
Heat check.
Get the fire extinguisher.
I will say, go check out Luke Brown and Locked On Vikings from last week, because he agreed with me. And it was interesting kind of how I pieced it together versus how he did, because we kind of came to the same conclusion, but talked about it in different ways. In the best and the worst ways, Dylan Thieneman plays a game like Lewis Cine, where you have him kind of on the roof, but you want him coming downhill. And quite frankly, he doesn't really have the strength profile. He gets bullied over by running backs consistently. There's the one play against Indiana in the first game last year where Roman Hemby just basically took him behind the woodshed and ran him over like a battering ram. I don't think he's a good center fielder, even though he kind of has the speed profile. I didn't like his recovery speed. I didn't like how his transitions were when he was having to kind of flip his hips on tape, but then he flipped his hips really smooth at the combine. So I'm like, okay, where's the difference here? So I watched 3 more games. I watched 6 games of this guy, and I don't think he's a good fit for the Vikings, because he's basically a box only guy without a strength profile to match it. If you want to put him in a Christian Parker led Vic Fangio defense in Dallas, I think like that idea can make sense, because that's what Ed Donatel wanted Lewis Cine to be. Stay on the roof, crash downhill, take big angles, and utilize your speed to go and attack. I don't think the Vikings are going to ask him to do that. And for me, it's not a good fit. And I would completely stay away. I have a 3rd round grade on him. I just don't like the player. And I tried to watch 6 full games of him. I'm just out.
Do you, let's just say they do pull the trigger at 18, which apparently every mock draft in the world has the Vikings taking. Do you still think he comes in and starts week 1? Or do you think is it that bad in your lens from those 6 games you watch? Is it that bad on that Lewis Cine type of level where we're getting closer into preseason games and we're kind of thinking like, why is Lewis Cine not in the mix here? What's going on? At the time they had Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith, 4 years younger, but it just felt like a little bit like, should we be worried about Lewis Cine? What's happening here behind the scenes? Are you on that level, or do you think he still comes in week 1 and still starts, just given the other options that they have with Theo Jackson and Jay Ward?
I just really don't think he's a good fit for how Brian Flores has showed us that he wants to utilize his secondary pieces. He wants guys who can be versatile. He wants guys who have a high football IQ and can do a lot of those disguising looks. I think Thieneman's a relatively limited player who I think can be a starter in this league. I just don't think it's in this defense. I think he's got to go to a Fangio system that's going to ask him to do essentially one thing that he's good at and kind of limit him otherwise. And with how Flores likes to call his defense, he's not going to be limited in what he's asked to do. He's going to be asked to do everything. And I just don't think he has that in him to be that well-rounded player.
Yeah, for sure. I respect the take. I don't want to hijack. Just one more follow-up. Yeah. I know they're both considered kind of hybrid type players. And I'm talking about McNeil Warren as well from Toledo. Have you watched McNeil Warren? Because I actually, at the beginning of this process, I was a lot more on McNeil Warren than I was Thieneman.
I liked McNeil Warren quite a bit. He barely missed the 1st round grade for me. The one thing that was concerning was when I watched the Kentucky game, he kind of took some rough angles, but I kind of equated that to he played in the MAC and he's used to max speed. So then when he goes and plays an SEC level opponent, okay, now you have to recalibrate and adjust. So once he gets to the NFL, I think there's going to be some growing pains where he's going to have to get acclimated to the speed like every college player does. But once he does, I think he's got the profile to be that well-rounded rep, and you can ask him to play off the roof. You can ask him to play deep. You can ask him to come in the box. His run defense is really superb. I like him a lot more. I would prefer a trade down than to take him at 18.
Yep.
I think with this safety class, you can ignore it until round 2. You can ignore it till round 3, and you can still get a starter. You don't have to force one at 18.
I need a substantial pushback, though, from Inman on this Thieneman thing, because a 3rd round, this is very controversial, is it not, Inman? This 3rd round grade.
It's a very high 3rd round grade.
A lot of people have him going before 18.
It's a high 3rd round grade.
We lost him.
79.7 out of 100. 80 is a 2nd round grade threshold on my scale. So we're not exactly talking. Hey, even my dog Odie is very excited about my opinion here, but
I don't think he likes it. I hear that bark. There's a lot of disapproval in that bark. He's saying that is a top 15 pick if I've ever seen one type bark.
Yeah, it's not a popular opinion, but whenever I find I have an opinion that strays from consensus, which happens every year, I have a couple really big ones. Last year, I was highest on like 13 guys. I had Quincy Riley 28th on my board. Guess what? The 4th round pick made all rookie teams across the league. So I felt really good about how that one is turning out so far. But I watched 3 more games and I didn't see what everybody else is. I didn't see the guy who can play a lead over the top and be a center fielder. I didn't see that athleticism pop on tape. When it doesn't pop on tape, I don't care what you tested. It's got to translate, and it just hasn't.
Here's the thing, though. I don't think you need an unbelievable strength profile to be effective in the box. I don't think, like, Harrison Smith does not have necessarily a great strength profile. He's a good tackler, right? It's more technique than it is the amount you can bench or like how strong you are per se. I think that given some time with Brian Flores, you can craft a role where maybe it is more box heavy. Now I know Josh Metellus is here too. Like Josh Metellus, like maybe it becomes superfluous. Maybe that's a reason why it makes less sense because you have someone that does that stuff. I get it, but it's such a versatile position in this defense. I would be surprised if Brian Flores could not find a role that works for him. And we'll see if Harrison Smith is even back. If Harrison Smith is back, I love his influence on young safeties. I mean, he's got a great track record of being part of defenses that kind of develop these young safeties. But I want to hear more from you on the cornerback group as well. Forno, guys you think could contribute right away. Your guy, Avion Terrell, aggravated the hammy. And your hot take fried Spinman's computer. So you have to apologize for that on the other side of the break. We'll pause and be back with more day one possible starters in the draft here in the Squad Show. We're brought to you today by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play-by-play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Rolling on with the Vikings Squad Show. Make sure you're checking out Luke Braun on Locked On Vikings, 30-minute daily dose Vikings football, and Locked On Vikings After Dark with Arif Hassan 3 days a week. That's on the Locked On Vikings feed right next to us here on the Vikings Squad Show. We go twice a week. The dog is still furious.
Yeah, he is.
We'll move on. I'll allow you to move on. We're still waiting for Spinman to reboot because he fried his computer. So cornerback. Got some interesting news today. Avion Terrell at the pro day, hammy tweaked, not going to get a number on the pro day. Sounds like it happened on his first run. He certainly would have been on my list and probably still is as a possible day one starter. Now, I don't know I'm not sure who gets bumped. I'm not sure if James Pierre, gets bumped down to your first utility corner and Avion Terrell starts as a CB3, which I would consider a starter in the same way that you might consider a third wide receiver a starter. Terrell, but I would also add Traden Stukes. Anybody with a 9.95 RAS, he had dinner with defensive pass game coordinator Gerald Alexander on Tuesday, and he's 24. Like the guy is basically fully baked after spending 16 years at Arizona. Actually 6, but who's counting?
Listen, I would love to spend 6 years in Tucson, Arizona. It's a really nice area. But yeah, I love Stukes. He's on the All Forno team, and he's one of my favorite players in this class. And I think he translates really well to what Brian Flores wants to do. He's a slot corner. He can play the outside. He can also play safety, where with that back end, if you can play all those types of roles, he's going to be able to have a spot for you. Plus, there's the age factor. He's going to be 24. And he had his best year coming off of a torn ACL. And some of the medical stuff might be a little bit of an issue. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell you it should or shouldn't be. But anytime there's a knee injury, you want to take a really good look at it. But the one area where he's got that other cornerbacks don't, like Terrell. He's old and has experience. And the two cornerbacks the Vikings have taken with Brian Flores in the building as defensive coordinator, old and experienced, and Mekhi Blackman and Kyrie Jackson. So having that element could end up being a huge thing when it comes to drafting corners, because you have to have a really high football IQ to kind of work with those pre-snap adjustments and those disguises, because once they actually settle into coverage, they're not doing anything revolutionary. It's everything before the snap to really screw up how the quarterback is seeing things, and then screw up some of the decision-making by the receivers. Because obviously, anytime you have a route, there's oftentimes like 5 to 6 different ways you could run it based on positioning and leverage. So those little nuanced details can really mess up an offense. Why the Vikings had the second best pass defense last year. So I love Stukes. If Terrell falls, trade down and get him. Maybe 49 becomes an option because you have such limited data on him at this point. I have no idea what's going to happen with this class, but there are a ton of really nice corners.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, Stukes was moved to more of a big nickel late in his Arizona career. Started out as and his size would indicate he's your outside corner. He's 200 pounds. He's almost 6'2", but they played him in the slot. Yeah.
Yeah. And slot in college is quite a bit different than slot in the NFL, because a lot of times, and we saw this with Justin Jefferson when he was at LSU, spacing is just so different. And when you play in the slot, oftentimes you're playing like 10, 15 yards off, and you're doing a lot more zone kind of concepts. But he can play, man, and he can run. He ran 4.33. And he can play outside. He can play inside. He can play deep. He can play in the box. The fact that he's done it all and he's shown he can do it all at a high level, I think is going to be really impactful for a guy like Brian Flores, because, hey, now I can just trust you to do anything. And, hey, maybe we need to sweat Byron Murphy Jr. with Stukes on a play. I don't have to worry about my guy who's playing in the slot kicking outside. It's fine. Just everything about him just screams Minnesota Viking, and I hope they make it happen.
Yeah, that'd be fun. What do you think about Colton Hood? Because I did some digging on Colton Hood out of Tennessee. Kind of intrigued. He's a 3 schools in 3 years guy.
Yeah.
Auburn to Colorado, so played under Dion. Then thrived at Tennessee. 4.44 speed, 9.64 RAS. Tested really well. Super physical. Kind of an intriguing prospect. Your thoughts? Any on Hood?
I like Hood. I don't love him as much as other people do. I've seen him really be mocked in the first round a decent amount. I don't love that. I think if you find him at like pick 49, I think it would make sense. He had to take over that CB1 role for Jermod McCoy, because obviously McCoy didn't play at all in 2025 despite being cleared in November. And the fact that he really hasn't like worked out at all. He's going to work out tomorrow, apparently, at the Tennessee Pro Day. But the fact he hasn't done so yet, big time concern for me, because if it's just a torn ACL and you're not working out at the combine because you're not comfortable yet, dog, you're like 15 months out of surgery. What's the deal here? Like, why is it taking so long for you to even do a workout? So the fact that Hood came in and he played really well as that top guy at Tennessee is a really nice kind of beacon of hope for his NFL future. And in past like iterations of the draft, we might be concerned with 3 schools in 3 years, but he performed in those 3 years and he was relatively consistent in doing so. So I'm not super worried about that. You do question how his development track may have been stunted a little bit because you're going from coach to coach to coach. But as we've seen with the Vikings, they go sometimes from coach to coach to coach at certain positions because, well, they lose coaches to promotions and stuff. So it actually might be a good thing for him. The fact that he's played in so many defenses under so many coaches, that he's got a bigger wealth of knowledge than somebody who just stayed at the same spot with continuity on the staff. Yeah.
Anyone else at corner that you would entertain starting in week 1, or did we exhaust the list?
No, that's the thing. There's quite a few guys on this list. Somebody who hasn't really been talked about is San Diego State's Chris Johnson. He was really kind of in the background because, look, he played at San Diego State. That offense, if you've ever watched it, is putrid, but that defense is really fun. And he really balled out when the freshman phenom from Cal, Jaren Kiwa Sagapolutele ended up kind of emerging onto the scene as this like darling because he's just got a beautiful football. And Chris Johnson absolutely torched him. Got a pick six off him. Got a couple passes defended. And he doesn't have the most fluid hips to be able to play man coverage consistently in the NFL, but he's got a level of intelligence and he does have really good ball skills and can thrive in zone. He's somebody you could pick right away. He's a 4-year senior, over 1,700 snaps, 22 years old. He can come in and just play solid corner. You don't have to have him be your CB1. And in this defense, you don't need a CB1. They were the second-ranked pass defense with 3 corners on the roster last year. So you just get a little bit of youth, some depth, and he can come in and potentially beat out guys like Isaiah Rodgers and James Pierre for real snaps in a similar way to how Mekhi Blackman did in his rookie year to take snaps away from Andrew Booth Jr. You can just come in and be impressive. I think if you see him at pick 49, it would be a really hard choice for me to not select a guy like Chris Johnson.
That's compelling. San Diego State. Let me talk center for a minute. We established earlier in the show that it's very possible that your center could start week 1. Today at the coaches meetings or the league meetings, KOC says that Blake Brandel is going to get the offseason center snaps of the incumbents. And they've done nothing to add to it in free agency yet. KOC also goes on to say, I do think it's a position that's got some really unique names in the draft, depending on where you might be looking to take one. Guys with experience, upside. Okay. They're eyeing up center in the draft. I don't think that's a secret. It feels like there's going to be this wave. There's going to be a run on centers, probably round 3. And it might be Lou, Hecht, Slaughter, and Logan Jones. If you had your pick of the litter, who are you taking?
I think overall I'd probably take Connor Lew because I do think pre-ACL tear in October, he was the best center in this class. The one guy I really don't like is Logan Jones. I think he plays way too high-waisted, and it would be like a Garrett Bradbury regen, but all the things that you didn't like about Garrett Bradbury are worse. So I'd be fine with that guy if you take him in round 4 or 5, but you got to take him early round 3. And to me, I don't like that kind of profile. Hecht is a good player. I think Jake Slaughter is boring, and I mean that complimentary. He's not going to drive guys off the ball. He's not going to be the best athlete, but he's technically sound. And he'll probably be like the 20th best center in the league. And that's pretty good on a rookie contract. Do you want to extend that guy? Maybe the Garrett Bradbury deal where you give him like $5.5 million. But I don't really see a ton of massive upside with this center class like some other people do. If Lou can come in and be completely fine from that ACL injury, I think he would be the guy that I would want to target. But then again, you might not have him for the entire offseason program. And who knows what would happen with the beginning of training camp if he'd be 100% ready, because he'd be about 9 months away from surgery. So you'd be limiting 26, but that shouldn't preclude you from taking him. But you would have to recalibrate those expectations for what you would see in year 1, because he might not be ready to play like real snaps until like week 5 or 6, because he's going to have some catch up to do as far as just getting acclimated in practice and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was a week 8 injury, which is about Halloween-ish. So, do your calendar math there. September 1st, that would be 10 months post-injury, I believe, which is, again, eliminates you from a lot of the offseason stuff that you need as a rookie in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he's only 20 years old. He doesn't turn 21 until August 30th, so he's young. I think Slaughter would be my guy. And if Inman were here, I think he'd jump in on that. I just like his consistency. He's the perfect size. And like you said, steady, boring, kind of what you want. You don't need outliers. You want your center to be the steadiest guy on the field.
Yeah.
We've talked DT, center, corner, and safety. I think the wide receiver 3, that's the interesting one, because can you find a wide receiver 3 at virtually any point in the first 4 or 5 rounds of the draft? Probably. And you mentioned Ty Felton's name. It doesn't feel like a lock to me that Ty Felton gets a promotion. this year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it certainly is going to be competition between Felton and any other body that they bring in. I think it's absolutely in play that they're looking for a Jalen Nailor type. And look at where Nailor was taken. That was a 6th-round pick that turned into something. So, I don't want to give away my sim, which we're talking about later, but someone like Skylar Bell that Inman profiled last week could be a pretty intriguing possibility.
Yeah, 100%. The one guy I really like for this Vikings team, and I wrote a long feature about him last week on A to Z Sports, is Jeremy Bernard, the Alabama wide receiver. Kevin O'Connell has targeted 2 profiles of wide receivers when it comes to the NFL draft. He's targeted speed demons, who he believes he can make into route running savants. He did that with Jalen Nailor, and he thinks he can do that with Ty Felton. And how much of that is coming from Keenan McCardell, I'm not 100% sure. But, I mean, McCardell was a great route runner in his day, and he played on multiple teams as like a really good complementary number 2 because of that. And the guys who are just well-rounded, that's the profile Addison has. That's the same profile Justin Jefferson has. Both those guys are a lot more twitchy than what Bernard offers, but he offers a very well-rounded profile in terms of how he gets open. His footwork is really clean, and he attacks the football really well. Plus, he's great at yards after the catch with a near, like, it's like 45% of his career yards came after the catch, which is something the Minnesota Vikings need. They did a great job at Alabama and his limited snaps at Washington because he was that 4th receiver behind Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk, to where they get him the ball on jet sweeps, they get him the ball out on screens, and he's got experience running a lot of those dagger concepts, the in-breakers over the middle of the field. So there's not going to be a ton of, hey, you got to learn how to run a route tree, which you do have with some guys in college, because a lot of teams don't throw over the middle of the field with a lot of evolution of the air raid. So having a guy like Bernard, who's 6 foot, 200 pounds, he can do a little bit of everything, attacks the ball well at the catch point. He's never going to be an elite guy. I have a high 3rd-round grade on him, but I think with how this class stacks up, I don't think 49 is really a bad spot to take a guy like this. He could come in and give you 30 catches, 500 yards, 5 touchdowns like Jalen Nailor did. And he could do that as a rookie because I think his profile is so similar to how O'Connell wants his receivers to play. I've seen him comp to Robert Woods, and we know that Woods worked really well with those Rams teams, and he played for Kevin O'Connell. Yeah, I think that could be really intriguing.
Nice. Forno grinding the film. Love it. When we come back, we'll dive into what Kevin O'Connell said just minutes ago at the league meetings, and also an ode to Joey Browner. All right, back in here on the Squad Show. We had Luke Inman. It was a great segment we had, and then he opened up Our Lads and Pro Football Reference and PFF at the same time, and he's got smoke coming. I think he still operates with the old desktop, like the boxy computer, like smoke coming out, and got the big tower to the side that's 3 feet tall with the CD-ROM drive. Just got sparks flying out of it. Opened up too many browsers. Let's dive into what KOC said this morning. And Forno, chime in if there's been any more reported that I've missed. The takeaways that I saw, we reported one, that Brandel would be the preferred option at center, but they're intrigued by the draft. On Jonathan Grenard, explosive quote. Yeah, I expect him to be a part of our team. And I'm not even going to read the rest of the gobbledygook that came after that. A big nothing burger that took up about 4 Kevin Seifert tweets.
Yeah.
JJ McCarthy is hitting the weight room. He's back in Minnesota. Okay. He's bulking up, which I think is needed. I mean, I think he was already playing catch up with his size last year. And I think he probably needs another year of it. He lost weight with the injury recovery, tried to get it back, and clearly needs a little bit more on his frame. So I appreciate that on his behalf. And then on Harrison Smith, quote, he knows how I feel about him, how we feel about him, but we also want to be respectful and give him space to kind of continue to figure out what he wants to do. I'm actually I'm a little more crass on this part. How long do you have to be respectful? Like when you're trying to kind of plan your future, are they respectful up until the week of the draft? And then they say, "Hey, Harrison, we need an answer, buddy. We got Dylan Thieneman sitting here. Forno hates him, but we love him. What if he's there at 18? Do we take him, Harrison? Do we take Dylan Thieneman?" Like, so what stands out to you about what KOC said this morning and anything else I missed?
So a couple things. One, like in terms of safety, I think they're just moving out without Harrison Smith, and he comes back, it's just a bonus. And if he comes back, I don't really think it's going to change how they plan throughout the NFL draft, because you don't take guys in the first round because you need them in 26. You take a guy in the first round because you think they can be a cornerstone of your team for 10 to 15 years. So if Smith comes back, I don't think it really impacts if they would take a guy like Thieneman or McNeil Warren at 18th overall. They're going to take him because they think they're a cornerstone piece. And if they play limited snaps in year one because Smith is here, I just think that's the cost of doing business, because guess what? Year two, that guy gets the starter role and we roll on. The McCarthy thing is interesting to me for the sole fact that everything he said matters 0%. Quarterback, breaking news, quarterback is working out at the facility. It doesn't really mean anything to me. Doesn't mean anything positive, doesn't mean anything negative. I expect the quarterback to be working out. I expect the quarterback to be involved in some capacity. The fact that he's doing it at the facility now instead of being in California, I just think it doesn't matter whether you believe McCarthy should be the guy long-term or if you think they should kick him out the door and keep Kyler Murray. I just think he's talking the talk, and half the time, not to be disrespectful, I kind of think it's complimentary as far as PR purposes. O'Connell sometimes just talks the talk and he becomes long-winded with stuff and he doesn't really tell us much. I just think this is one of those instances. It just is what it is. He's working out the facility. Cool.
Yeah, but Dylan Thieneman, though. You can't hold me down. Our lads be damned. You can't hold me down. Jumping in here, obviously. Fill me in. What did I miss? Where are we at? What do we talk? KOC quotes, I'm assuming.
Here's the too long didn't read version.
Okay.
When faced with all of the centers that we like, Forno would take, I think you said Connor Lew. He doesn't like Logan Jones. He doesn't like Thieneman. He likes Chris Johnson, the corner from San Diego State. Inman, give us one thing. Give us one take from the segment you missed. One guy.
Okay, guys that could. We're talking about guys that could start right away.
Yeah.
Again, McNeil Warren from Toledo, I think plug and play day one guy. I think the conversation with him becomes like, how much better value can you get? Can you trade down 4 or 5 spots? But McNeil Warren, not only in pass pro, but or pass coverage, but run support as well. He's day one plug and play, especially against Theo Jackson and Jay Ward. AJ Halsey, I seem to be a little bit higher on than most. More again of a free safety, but a big thumper, big hitter, especially getting downhill, good click and close. Again, I keep reverting back to the safety spot just because it feels like there's a clear, easy path. But if you want me to go center, I'm with Forno on Connor Lew. I think he tore his ACL. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
If he comes in healthy from day one, and I think I just read as I was logging back in that KOC was talking about Blake Brandel getting some center reps. So again, that kind of maybe convolutes the center starting battle right away with Michael Juergens as well. But if Connor Lew comes in from Auburn, who without the ACL, I think we'd be talking about clear cut, like the number one center in this class. If he comes in healthy in OTAs and training camp, I think he's definitely a day one, week one starter for sure for the Vikings as well.
Yeah, Forno's devastated about the Avion Terrell hammy pull. But could it make him?
This is how Andrew Booth started too, guys. Clemson corner. It was a hammy. No, I'm just kidding.
We both shared a lot of mutual trade and Stukes love. And I think, Inman, you would toss your hat in on that too, right?
Big Stukes. Dude, I'm a big Avion Terrell guy. Even if it's at 18. Yes, perfect world. We're always talking about maximizing value. Maybe you can trade back a couple spots. Give me Terrell or McNeil Warren at 22, 23, 24. But the more I kind of study this class, whether it's D'Angelo Pons from Indiana, Chris Johnson, I'm glad you mentioned him. Big fan of him from San Diego State. Keontae Scott from Miami. I think some more of an old school type of Miami Hurricane corner who I really like. A little bit bigger, physical, taller, outside boundary guy. Stooks, we've talked about on this show. Chandler Rivers from Duke, maybe in round 3, but still in that kind of tier. And even Keith Abney, too. I'll throw out one more from Arizona State. I really, really enjoy this kind of second tier, we'll call it, of these cornerbacks. I feel like not only do a lot of them fit what Flores wants and some position flexibility, I think a lot of them are low-key big playmakers as well. And obviously it fills a huge position of need. So if they don't go Terrell at 18, maybe they go, let's just say McNeil Warren or Peter Woods, for example. At pick 49, sure, maybe Pons is gone, right? But I feel like there is going to be somebody staring you in the face at pick 49 and maybe again with that early 3rd round pick too. Maybe you want to double dip and go back to back. Because I just really enjoy. I really think there's great value, starter potential for sure in the second tier cornerbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people, and going back to safety, Dylan Thieneman could be the next Joey Browner, which pivots us right to Joey Browner. Rest in peace, man. Age 65. Let me just say this first of all. We're all the wrong age to do this the right way. Like, he's a Vikings legend. None of us watched him in his prime play football. But 9 years with the Vikings, 37 picks, a true legend that played in just kind of the in-between era, like post Purple People Eaters defense, had to endure Les Steckel, had to endure a couple coaching changes in that awkward, like old Metrodome era where the Vikings weren't very good and the highlights are weird because they're grainy and you expect them to be at the old Met, but it's at the Metrodome. But he was a baller. He was an absolute baller. The physicality, the ball hawking nature. Joey Browner gone too soon, age 65. This is one where our dads, Inman, probably could have a better eulogy than we could.
Everything I was told, though, and obviously as we've gotten older and understood and researched Viking lore a little bit more, tone setter, like whether it was my dad or uncles, all big Vikings football fans growing up, tone setter. I mean, you think back to that time frame. It was like when he was at his peak, right? 80s. It was him and Ronnie Lott, from what I understand. It kind of set the new standard for like what the prototype safety was in the NFL. Ronnie always got like more attention and more love playing in Oakland and in San Francisco, but it felt like they would go back and forth every week. Who was going to win Defensive Player of the Week accolades? And that just kind of tells you, kind of speaks volume that those two were kind of in a class of their own across the league. What did he have? 6 Pro Bowls, I want to say, 5-time All-Pro, and just clearly one of the cornerstones of that Vikings defense in the 80s. So you watch some highlights or talk to the generation of our dads and uncles and things like that got to see him week in and week out. The word intimidation constantly came up as far as the conversations I would have.
Yeah.
Forno?
Good football player. And those defenses that the Vikings had in like the late 80s honestly don't get enough love. Now, obviously, Chris Dolman, Keith Millard, and then he transitioned to Henry Thomas. Then you get John Randall in the early 90s. There were some really good units. And Browner was the Vikings' first-round pick in that infamous 1983 draft where you watch the From Elway to Marino 30 for 30 documentary. They kind of just pass over Browner, but it's
what a class, by the way. What a draft class.
Incredible draft class. Yeah. Darrell Green was the 28th overall pick, the final pick in the first round, and he might have been the fastest player in NFL history.
Have you ever seen the track and field sprint competition with him and other guys? Like, it wasn't Champ Bailey because that's way different era, but Darrell Green, even at like 36 years old, with hands down, without a doubt, the fastest player of like anybody in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with Sam's take about how he's kind of in that lost era of Vikings football because you don't really have a big connection to a guy like Jerry Burns. I had a big connection to Dennis Green growing up, and those being my formative years as a Vikings fan. But it just feels like that era does not get revered very much because it's like, oh, just a bunch of 9-7 seasons. You had that miracle run in '87 that you almost made the Super Bowl. And then it transitioned to Dennis Green in the beginning of the '90s. But Browner was a cornerstone of all those teams. And he was oftentimes the engine behind that back seven being functional. And you had Carl Lee on the outside who had some good years, but Browner was the impact guy. And plus, I'm not going to lie, the last name Browner just kind of kicks ass. I don't know. That
such a different era too, looking back, right? Like the rules have changed so much. We're almost a little numb to them year after year, the rules changing so much, but like obviously a lot more barbaric back then. And like, you talk to anybody who was dialed into the Vikings during that time and watched Browner. It was almost like he put the fear of God into anybody who was going up for a catch, even if they just knew he was in the vicinity, right? Like one of those guys that caused the alligator arms going over the middle of the field. And once he kind of set that reputation for himself too, it sounds like it was kind of crazy to see how he could impact the game from almost just like this mental standpoint now, because you got receivers thinking, am I hearing footsteps now behind me? He's almost playing this like psychological warfare and kind of influencing how offenses, whether it's the quarterback or the pass catchers, would kind of play the game with him out on the field.
Yeah, and rest in peace to Jeff Seaman as well, 75 years old, linebacker who probably got overshadowed by the front four on that Purple People Eaters defense, but played in the 70s, 156 games, another first-round pick. 1972 class. Couple Vikings legends gone too soon. When we come back, Mock Sims trade back edition, and Inman gives us his prospect of the day. Quick pause. Rolling on, Viking Squad Show. Check out Luke Braun, of course, on Locked On Vikings. Appreciate that. I'm sure we'll have some collaboration for the draft as well in that first round. Can't wait. That's always one of our best days of the year. So we had a little bit of crossed wires on the instructions here. Forno and I did the first 3 rounds. Inman did all 7 rounds, and that's fine. But the goal is to trade back and maximize value. I gave a limit of 3 trade backs just to keep it within reason. So Inman, let's look at yours first. There's the visual for those on YouTube covering up my face awkwardly. Why don't you take us through your, what do you got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 guys in this draft class.
Yeah, I actually only ended up trading back once here, Sam. I was kind of, once I got on the clock with 49, 58, 82, I was kind of just too tempted just to, as the old saying goes, just go get your guys, man. Don't overcomplicate it. See a guy that you think can be a starter type level player, just go get him. Don't get cute. This roster, though, kind of the condition this roster is in, I don't think they're in a position to get too cute and just, let's go grab a tight end with the second pick, because TJ Hawkinson might be gone in 2027. They need impact guys in the worst way. They need like high level depth guys that can come in and make the roster better. So that's kind of what I did here. Go get your guys. I kind of went crazy with the secondary. As you can see, Avion Terrell, who we've talked about, AJ Halsey with that pick 49, came back with our guy Stukes, Kyle Lewis from Pittsburgh. It was him and Anthony Hill still on the board, the linebacker, more of an off-ball linebacker, old school guy from Texas. Debated on that, but ultimately I think Kyle Lewis just fits kind of the Brian Flores scheme a little bit more as a hybrid linebacker / kind of box safety. Got a center at pick 97 with Logan Jones, but kind of pick your flavor. Could have taken Jake Slaughter there as well, kind of just for conversation's sake. I've taken Slaughter in almost all these mocks, so I went with Logan Jones here, and then Bud Clark, who, spoiler alert, we might be talking about later. Bud Clark with pick 133 in round 4. So pretty heavy duty on the secondary. Kind of went crazy with the secondary, but I think when you really think about it, I mean, corner is such a premium position now. You need 3 legit guys kind of at all times, all 17 weeks of the season. So you better have good depth in that room. B, we've also started to talk a lot about like it's a premium position and these top cornerbacks, they're getting paid. Trent McDuffie, I can't get over how much he got paid. Just such big money. It's such a luxury to get quality level production with cheap guys on rookie deals. And then also see, just to throw this in there, now I feel like I've got flexibility. If I want to let somebody like Isaiah Rodgers go next year at corner and save even more money for 2027, I feel like I have a lot more youth and talent in that corner room. And I've also protected myself for not only Harrison Smith's retirement here, but I think what I feel like, in my opinion, I got a new 3 safety package that I feel good about for Flores. So he's still got multiple options on the table, can stay creative and not be pigeonholed if it does end up just being somebody like Metellus and Theo Jackson again. So I know it kind of feels extreme. A lot of secondary guys early on, and let's be real, probably won't happen this way. But if you are ever going to bulk up on a position, this Vikings secondary probably needs it. Again, in my opinion, as we talked about in the first segment, I think the secondary needs this kind of replenish more than any other position. When you think about kind of the lack of building blocks, they've got both at safety and corner for 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, double safety, double corner in the first 150 picks.
Yeah.
I think in the trade back world, the one thing you really want to do is you want to get a 4th, because right now the Vikings are sans a 4th round pick. You've got about a 70 pick gap between something like the 90s and the 160s where you have nothing. So you want to get in the 4th, which Inman accomplishes, added a 2nd, got Terrell, got Stukes, got Logan Jones. Forno, you're not a big Logan Jones guy, but if you're taking Logan Jones, if the Vikings take Logan Jones, they probably view him as your center of the future. So let's get to Forno's. And again, just the first 3 rounds for him. Got a couple trades here. Take us through it.
So I kind of looked at it to where I wanted to pick up some depth. I wanted to pick up at least 1 pick on day 2. And I got that with pick 92. And then I was able to upgrade 49 and 92 pretty significantly by moving down another 4 spots. And quite frankly, the difference between 18 and 24 is so negligible where it really didn't matter that much to me. I'm not sold that the Vikings are going to add a lot of cornerbacks to this room because they were the 2nd ranked pass defense with 3 of them last year. So how much does he actually want to prioritize that? But in 3 years with Brian Flores, we've seen 3 serious differentiations of how he's run this defense, and it's all been based on what personnel he has. So maybe he just wants to load up on corner. Like, that's the one part about this business. We just have no idea. But I still like Peter Woods. I think he had a little bit of a down year, but some of that was how Clemson decided to just do twists and stunts on seemingly 90% of all pass rush reps. And offenses really catered their system to not go toward either TJ Parker or Peter Woods, and they were often on the same side of the field. So some of the production is just going to be limited from those aspects. Plus, he just didn't produce nearly as well, but he was thought of as a consensus top 5 projection going into the year. I feel comfortable taking that guy at 24, even with a little bit of a down year, because you get him in what Brian Flores wants to do and how they like to slant and attack. And I think Woods can fit that really well. We talked about Bernard before Luke jumped back on. I think he is tailor-made to be a Kevin O'Connell wide receiver, just with how balanced he is, especially as a nuanced route runner. Not as twitchy as guys like Addison and Jefferson, but he's the same general archetype of receiver where you can ask him to do a little bit of everything. He got a couple Robert Woods comps, and I think that makes a little bit of sense for how he plays the game. Plus, he's a great yak guy. Grayson Halton, just get another gap shooting defensive tackle. You need pass rushers. I can find run stuffers anywhere. Jonathan Bullard just signed a day ago with the Dallas Cowboys. You can find a good run stuffer on the free agent market. DJ Reader's still out there, but it's hard to find guys who can rush the passer. And Halton might be a little bit of a DPR, which is fine. You're taking him in round 3. Milton Williams came in round 3. Oso Digizua came in round 3. You can develop a little bit more well-rounded aspects of his game. I think you could potentially have a long-term starter on your hands. And at the very least, just put him in on 3rd downs and just let him go. Amari Harvey. Look, this guy is a round 7 pick in PFF. I don't get it. He's a round 3 player for me.
They gave you an F.
Yeah,
they hate your draft.
Fine. I don't care. I love this guy's film. Everybody knows how stupid high I was in Quincy Riley last year, and he made a bunch of all rookie teams. This is the next guy that I think can be in that Quincy Riley mold. They play incredibly similar styles of football. Very similar as far as packages, too. Harvey is 6'1", 190. Riley was 5'10" and 5'8", 193. And they play a very similar style of football. So I'm fine with that. Genesis Smith, a little bit more of an over-the-top guy, but you can ask him to do a little bit more of those versatile things. I don't think he's quite as good as Stukes, but in that defense, they had those two guys, and I think it was Dalton Johnson, who's the third one. All three guys could easily go in the top 100 picks. And if you can get Smith at 97, I'd feel really good about that. And that's what I mean by the safety class. You don't have to take one early. You can get one in round 3, and that guy could potentially start early for your team.
I trust Forno's opinions a lot, and he probably has done more Amari Harvey research than me. I just want to point out how hilarious it will be if the Vikings solution at adding a corner pipeline is the 7th round grade guy, Amari Harvey, in the 3rd round. That would be unbelievable. And hey, Forno may
almost
have
as taking Troy Williamson with the 8th overall pick. No, I'm kidding. You know what's the most impressive about this mock actually is the fact that you got an F right in the middle of this thing, but still ended up with an overall draft grade of a C+. So that tells you how good they liked the rest of those picks, anyways.
Yeah, especially Halton and Genesis Smith. So here's mine. Tell me if you see a theme, particularly toward the bottom. The theme is size. I've got a half ton of man in the 3rd round. Here's how I attained this first 2 days class of Avion Terrell, Skylar Bell, Daryl Jackson Jr., Jake Slaughter, and Markel Bell. The other theme would be Bells. With pick 18, I moved back to 21. I added a 3rd. That was a trade with Pittsburgh. And I still got Avion Terrell. Dylan Thieneman was already gone off the board at 14, so I didn't stick around at 18. Got Terrell, pick 21. Got that corner. Then at 49, wanted to add a 4th. Don't love trading with Detroit. Just don't love giving the division rival the edge up. But I traded 1 pick back with Detroit, got a 4th, gave a 7th. They took Malachi Lawrence. I'm sure that won't haunt the Vikings. I took Skylar Bell. Skylar Bell, Connecticut guy, 5-year guy, old guy, huge numbers with the Huskies. 1,200 yards last year, very explosive. Then it gets fun. In the 3rd round, Daryl Jackson Jr. at 76. He's a 330-pound monster. I guess you would say the second Caden McDonald type on the board. Huge run stuffer at 76. Jake Slaughter, the safe pick at center at 82 during the run of centers, right? Kind of in this window. I get my guy Slaughter. And then at 97, we're having fun. We're getting your swing tackle of the future, 6'9", 340-pound, 5'3" speed guy, Markel Bell, the Cane from Miami. We've got 1,000 pounds of man in the 3rd round here.
Ziggy's going to have to get another private jet, man. They're not all going to be able to fit max capacity on those road games, man. What are we doing? Can you imagine being in the middle seat between Daryl Jackson and Markel Bell, and your recliner's not working either? That's a long flight, man. That's a long flight.
Yeah.
I like it. Obviously, we highlighted Skylar Bell, prospect of the day. I think was that 2 episodes ago, maybe last episode ago. So big fan of Skylar Bell. Obviously, I think for me, whether it's Bernard or a guy like Bell, 11 picks later, I love both the players, and ultimately, I just want to add good players. I don't know if they're gonna have just the luxury to use their 2nd pick on a receiver. But if this is how it played out, really good group of guys right here. Daryl Jackson, you're right, 6'5", 336, I want to say. I think that's what you said. Just a pure monster. Let me ask you this, Forno. Would you rather have somebody like Caden Proctor? And I think I know the answer here. But Caden Proctor at, let's just say, pick 35, or Daryl Jackson Jr. at where Sam's got him going at pick 76?
Wait, are you talking Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle, or Caleb Proctor, the defensive tackle?
No, neither. Caden McDonald. McDonald.
I'd probably be a little bit more comfortable with Daryl Jackson in the 3rd round, just because what you'd have to trade up or that far down
Yeah.
to then go get McDonald at that spot. I don't necessarily love that.
I think it's
but-
better value to go get a guy like Jackson,
Yeah.
2 rounds later, definitely.
And
And again, I like Caden McDonald, I
Yeah.
do, but like we're just talking about just a really good run stuffer. It feels like
Mhm.
better value and a better use of my picks too, knowing I can go get a corner in the first round or a different position. So I like that you kind of plucked out Darrell Jackson Jr. here, Sam, because we've talked a lot about this defensive tackle or defensive line group is just not like that deep. Once you get past kind of that first tier or two, and we haven't kind of highlighted Darrell Jackson Jr., who, again, if you're just looking for a big Jonathan Bullard, run stuffing DJ Reader type of dude, Jackson definitely checks those boxes for sure.
Mhm.
Our prospect today, Dawn, to end the show. Inman, why don't you tell us about a horned frog named Bud Clark?
Did I give it away? Did I spoil it that much? Is that obvious? I just feel like we've talked about safeties on this episode, which is fun. I think we've all become just kind of so locked into Rob Brzezinski, though, pulling the trigger, whether it's Thieneman or McNeil Warren in that first round. But there's definitely a world, as we just saw with our mocks, where like that definitely doesn't happen, right? So I think at least just talking about some of these other options at safety later in the draft, Forno, you did a good job pointing out that it is a pretty good deep group in these top 100 picks. And this should be a talking point more, I think. I don't think we're talking about it enough. Super interesting Bud Clark prospect, kind of given where he's mocked right now in this, I'll say like 80 to 90 to 120 range, kind of in that late third, fourth roundish window. I think, with Thieneman and Warren, you're getting these kind of hybrid, do-it-all type of dudes. But Clark is definitely, one of these just pure free safeties. And I don't think there's a ton of those in this class, actually, that at least you'd talk about as having kind of some of those instant impact skill sets. He is on the smaller size. He's got a slender frame. I want to say 6'1", 188, just call it 6'1", 190, I think. But his bread and butter and where he's at his best is just kind of being able to sit in the middle of the field and just kind of explode downhill and make these splash plays on the ball, which, he's done a lot. He's really, truly a ball hawking type of center fielder. 15 career picks, 20 career pass deflections. And if that sounds like a lot, it is. He actually had the most interceptions in the country from 2022 to 2025. So some of that obviously is, okay, he was a 6-year senior. With that, there's pros and cons. He's got over 2,700 career snaps under his belt. He's kind of seen it all. He's got really good post-snap route recognition. I think he's got really good processing skills, the way he kind of diagnoses plays and reads a quarterback eyes, and then just click and close on that ball, man, is so good. But you can tell he's just a very smart, kind of cerebral player back there. He's got good IQ for the game, 3-time captain as well, which you obviously love to see. But again, the cons, he's older, right? I think he's going to be 24, I want to say, when he's drafted. But I don't know with Brian Flores if that's like that bad of a thing. I don't think it's something that you drop him 3 rounds later for Brian Flores. In fact, for Flores, it might be a good thing, honestly, the more we talk about what Flores is looking for. He's got more reps in the tank coming in day one in OTAs. I don't think he's going to be a guy that needs to be kind of babysat or hold their hands all summer long. I think he can give you a lot more in that kind of aspect of the game than most 21, 22-year-olds can coming out. So he checks a lot of boxes that you want from a pure free safety. I know run support is can be an issue with that slender frame, but it's not from like a lack of effort or determination. Like he's always flying downhill, gets his pads very low, tries to trip you up. So the technique is going to need some work. He could definitely put on 10 pounds, ideally without losing some quickness. I think that'd go a long way. Great RAS score too, by the way, 932. I think that's like 84 out of, over 1,200 safeties. 4.41 speed, great 10-yard split, good broad jump, 38-inch vertical. So he ripped up the combine, ripped up Mobile. I wasn't down there. Forno, you were. It sounded like he turned a lot of heads during the Senior Bowl week. So his stock started really kind of shot through the roof during that week. I know it's kind of cooled down a little bit since then. But I think my bigger point here is like, if you don't go safety with one of those first 2 picks, and Forno's touched on this multiple times this episode alone, and you're going into that 3rd round and that run of kind of top tier guys at safety is long gone. it's really hard not to, like him say at pick 97 for the Vikings if he's still on the board. So Bud Clark, safety, TCU, put him on the prospect of the day list.
Who do you think BWS MPP was referring to with this comment?
I'm going to be honest, Sam. I think it was you because of when it came in.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but now that you brought it up, the timing when we both looked at that.
Forno had an F on his board. Come on.
C+ overall.
Forno, quick thoughts on Bud Clark.
Good football player. I love how Luke kind of highlighted the ball skills, because if you're taking a guy like Bud Clark and you're going to be okay with some of those size deficiencies, it's because of the ball skills. It kind of gives me some Andre Sisco from Syracuse vibes, kind of watching him and how he identifies route concepts, how he attacks the football. And Sisco was an absolute ball magnet in his college days. And it hasn't necessarily translated one-to-one in the NFL, but we're not talking about his NFL production. We're talking about what the player was in college. And it's a perfect example of why, hey, don't force safety at 18. You can get a guy in round 2, round 3. And honestly, you could argue the same for cornerback. You could argue the same for receiver. And that's why I've been such a proponent of like a guy like Peter Woods or CJ Allen from Georgia, the linebacker, because I am not as high on this linebacker class as a lot of people are. And I think Allen's one of like the 2 guys that I would really target as being a potential alpha on this defense. But you can wait on safety because there's just so many of them. It's like you just pull a name out of that. Oh, that guy's a starter. Oh, that guy's a starter.
But it's like every draft class, I'm always like, dude, take a stab, throw a dart on a day 3 running back. Just do it every year. One on every 2 or every 3, you might hit on a guy, a little scat back, third down guy, whatever. Some years I'm like, just take 2. If you got a lot of picks back in the Spielman era when he kept trading back, he had 4 7th round picks. I was like, take 2 of them. Why not? This year, I'm almost like double dip at safety. Whether you take one in the first round or not, double dip at safety, because you could use 2 of them for sure. You could use an influx of just youth and talent. I know it's not considered like this super highly valuable position, but in this Flores defense, I think it's more valuable than maybe most defenses. And, looking back too, can't remember who brought this up. Sam, I think it was Reggie like 2-3 episodes ago. Looking back, like the loss of Cam Bynum and his kind of playmaking skills in the back end, I think it was a lot more to overcome than I think we've talked about. And adding a new, again, just kind of pure free safety ball hawker could be exactly what the doctor ordered here for Flores in that defense.
No doubt. Great stuff today, gents. Squad Show's back on Thursday. Should be an Alec Lewis day on Thursday. Spinman there as well. Talking more draft. Plenty of Minnesota Vikings football. Draft's getting awfully close. 3+ weeks away. Can't wait. Thank you, Forno. Thank you, Luke. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Back next time on the Vikings Squad Show on the #1 sports podcast network.